Number 10. Faking cancer. In 2019, a woman was turned into the police for fraud by her own husband. A Pennsylvania woman was arrested for faking cancer and collecting money through fundraising campaigns on both Facebook and GoFundMe. Her name is Jessica Ann Smith, 31 years old at the time of her arrest. She used the crowdfunding campaigns, along with falsified medical documents, to collect roughly $10,000 in cash. The Chester County resident was asking people to assist with her medical bills and other colon cancer-related costs. She claimed to be facing massive bills, preposterous traveling costs, and at the same time having to pay for her kids' childcare. And all the while, she claimed that she couldn't work because of the cancer. She received donations from at least 161 people, and yet she never had cancer. The authorities became aware of her scam after her husband Robert reported what she was doing to the Euclid Township Police Department. She thought she would get away with it, collecting all that cash without her husband even finding out. But he figured out her scam because of their joint bank account when he saw the money pouring in from seemingly nowhere. After he went to the police station to file a report for fraud, the jig was up. The following investigation revealed that Jessica had actually been lying to her work that her father was dead, so she couldn't come in, when in reality, her father was not dead at all. In the end, she was charged with theft by deception and released on her own recognizance. Her campaigns were all shut down. Number 9. Faking terminal cancer. Toni Standen, 29 years old, shaved her head, was interviewed by newspapers, and told the world that she had cancer and that it had spread to her bones and organs. She faked an incredibly elaborate hoax with the intention of using donations to pay for her dream wedding at a cost of £8,500. She lied about having terminal cancer so that her friends and strangers on the internet would fork over cash so that she could have the wedding she'd always dreamed of. Toni claimed that whatever cancer she had was spreading through her entire body and would soon kill her. This was despite the fact that her father Derek was really dying of cancer. She basically begged her friends for money so that her dying dad would be able to walk her down the aisle before they both passed on. A campaign was launched to raise funds. The woman ended up making around $10,000, and now she's looking at jail time. Nonetheless, she still used that money to pay for her fabulous wedding. The only downside for Toni was that her father died the day before the service. When the truth came out, Toni lost every single one of her friends. She had to go to court, where she pleaded guilty to fraud by false representation between February of 2019 and April of 2020. And in the end, the only person who supported her was her husband, James. It hasn't been confirmed, but it does appear that James was in on the lie so that the pair would have enough money for their dream honeymoon after their dream wedding. Number 8. The homeless scam. In Pennsylvania, a pair of motorists got stranded on the ramp of a freeway when a homeless man they had never met before came to their rescue. The homeless man gave the stranded motorists his last $20 to get them out of a bind. It was such a touching story that people donated over $400,000 to a GoFundMe campaign to help this good-natured, kind-souled homeless man get back on his feet. Unfortunately for everyone, the whole thing was a lie. The homeless man is named Johnny Bobbitt Jr. The motorists were Kate McClure and her boyfriend Mark D'Amico. The three of them had cooked up the scheme together in November of 2017 to see how much money they could rake in from the public. They had never anticipated they would make almost $500,000 from their scam. The evidence compiled by the prosecution against the trio was overwhelming. Just hours after the campaign went live, McClure texted a friend and admitted the whole thing was a fabrication. Burlington County prosecutor Scott Caffina said that what really happened is that the three of them sat down and plotted a feel-good story that would rouse the public. Things went wrong when McClure and D'Amico tried to keep all the money to themselves and push the homeless man out of the scheme. When they had backstabbed him, he immediately tried to sue the couple, and this resulted in the investigation that flipped the whole scam on its head. All three of them have now been charged with theft by deception, and all their money was taken back. In 2022, Mark D'Amico was given 27 months in jail. In 2019, Johnny Bobbitt was given 5. But Caitlin McClure seems to have avoided any real punishment. Number 7. Abusing death. Kyle Saunders, an 18-year-old from Wellingborough in the UK, admitted in court that he set up a fake fundraiser to make money off 4 young men who died in a tragic car crash. Kyle set up a GoFundMe page following the horrible disaster on the A4 in Wiltshire back in August of 2020. Matthew Park, Corey Owen, Ryan Nelson and Jordan Rawlings, all between the ages of 19 and 20, died after their vehicle left the road and crashed straight into a house. An inquest into the deaths said the car may have been going 120 miles per hour before the crash, and that the driver, Jordan Rawlings, was over the legal alcohol limit. Kyle Saunders saw the tragedy as an opportunity. He created the fundraiser under the pretense that the money would be used to pay for a shrine for the victims. He acquired roughly $7,000, but there was never any memorial. People got suspicious. Kyle got caught, and he was forced to admit there was no plan for any shrine at all. He had taken all that money for himself. Since he was caught, the money has been taken back to be returned to the donors. And since Kyle is so young, he was spared jail time and instead sent to rehab. Number 6. Fake non-profit organizations. Ian Hosang of Staten Island, a man who was once a wolf on Wall Street and who has ties to the New York Mafia, recently got in some major trouble over a heap of scams. Ian had set up 24 fake cancer charities across the entire country. He didn't just make up one cancer story, he went big and created dozens of them. He managed to scam kind-hearted donors out of over $150,000. It all started in 2014 when Ian began to establish illegitimate non-profit organizations with names that sounded real, like the American Cancer Society for Children and United Way of New York Incorporated. He collected donations across America, but the donations never went to any kind of medical research. According to the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, he lined his own pockets instead. These are the exact words DA Eric Gonzalez used in a statement. Ian was arrested on May 9th on charges of grand larceny, identity theft, and scheming to defraud. Alas, he was released shortly after without bail. Believe it or not, Ian was given similar slaps on the wrist before over other charity schemes. He was caught in 2018 in North Dakota and again in 2021 by the Michigan Attorney General Office. Now that this is his 3rd time being busted, collecting huge amounts of cash through scams, he's looking at 7 years in prison if convicted. Number 5. Cashing in on generosity. A charity for air ambulance in Wales was forced to cancel in spring of 2022 after trouble with a scam. Fake social media accounts were set up alongside the legitimate charity to cash in on generosity. The Wales Air Ambulance Service is an organisation of rescue operators in the UK. They use helicopters to transport people who need to be rescued out of dangerous situations, like if something happens on top of a mountain. They had just set up a charity competition to raise money for themselves when they were targeted. Their charity was held in a kind of raffle format, with the winner getting a VIP trip to one of their bases. But over the first weekend the charity was active, one or more scammers set up a bunch of fake accounts on Instagram and Facebook in the name of their charity. This created mass confusion because people weren't sure who they were supposed to send their money to. This was a huge problem because the Wales Air Ambulance must raise over $8 million each year to keep the service running smoothly. They go on over 3,500 missions a year, but the government doesn't pay for them. They have to pay for themselves, and they do that through charities. The charity urged, "Our helicopters are kept in the air through charitable donations fundraising events, and membership of our in-house salvage lottery. Somebody, who has yet to be caught, used their own charity against them to confuse their donors and steal their cash. Number 4. Tricking the community. Cynthia and Jeff Lamberson were arrested on March 1st, 2022, on accusations of pocketing money that they had raised through a fundraiser. They have since been charged with a level 6 felony for fraud and theft. The Rochester police first became aware of the scam when a concerned citizen came forward to complain. This unnamed citizen said the couple had raised money which they said would be donated to the American Cancer Society. However, the person who reported it believed it was all a ploy to earn a few extra bucks. The ploy became extremely complicated and elaborate. The couple hosted 2 different fundraiser functions in 2021. These are local business owners who held the fundraisers in their own businesses, including a food store in Plymouth. They raised about $10,000, collecting all that money through their PayPal account. However, the exact amount is unknown because the police weren't able to track anything outside of PayPal. Whatever the pair got through checks and cash is unknown. All the cops know is that the whole fundraising business was fake and that the couple used the money to help with their own small businesses. Number 3. We Build the Wall. We Build the Wall was a project intended to raise money for the border wall between the US and Mexico. The co-founder of the project was Brian Colfidge, a 39-year-old Air Force veteran who lost both legs in a mortar attack in Iraq. In 2022, he admitted to pocketing hundreds of thousands of dollars that were donated to him and the organization in the belief that the wall would be built. Instead of building that wall, Brian hoarded the money for himself. But Brian was not the only one involved in the scam. The case actually started in August of 2020 when Donald Trump's advisor Steve Bannon was dragged off a yacht and arrested for ripping off donors who were giving donations to build a border wall. Steve Bannon faced no consequences for his actions and was pardoned by Donald Trump just before he left office. This was even though prosecutors alleged he pocketed over $1 million, some of that money which went to paying off Brian Colfidge. Without anyone to protect him, Colfidge found himself the key suspect in the investigation. He pleaded guilty to wire fraud conspiracy and would have gotten 46 years in prison. That is, had he not already made a deal not to get more than 5 years. His sentencing has been scheduled for September of 2022, so we'll have to wait and see if he actually gets any jail time for the massive fraud. Number 2. The Fake Sick Girl. In the town of Riverside, some transients came up with a shockingly creative scam to dupe people out of their money. Riverside police officials had to openly warn the public not to give their cash to anyone with a sign saying they have a sick child who needs money. This is because in early December of 2021, 3 people were busted standing by the road and begging for money while saying they had a sick child with medical bills. The trio were holding a sign explaining a 4-year-old girl was sick and in need of donations. The sign had some pretty atrocious spelling on it, which was probably the first thing that tipped people off that it wasn't real. They spelled acute leukemia, acute with a K, and leukemia with an MY. When the officer questioned the transients, who admitted to being part of a group of vagabonds who move from place to place and beg for money, they came clean about the scam. They had no idea who the girl in the picture on their sign was. Still, it had cashed them in over $400. Number 1. Lights for LAYLA. Randy Romanoff was the woman behind Lights for LAYLA. It was a foundation she started to raise money to put street lights at local bus stops following the terrible and tragic death of Layla Aiken in 2019. The 8-year-old child was run over by a careless motorist as she waited for her school bus in the dark. Romanoff raised $72,000 for the charity. However, she wasn't all that interested in putting up lights to keep school kids safe. She was more interested in spending the cash on resort vacations, fancy shopping trips, and luxury items. Randy Romanoff was ordered to pay restitution in the form of $20,000. Plus, she was sentenced to 180 days in jail after she pled guilty to fraud in 2022. But the story actually has a few more layers. Randy didn't spend all the donation money on herself. Some of it was sent to Layla's mother, about $45,000. Yet Layla's mother was never found to have committed any kind of crime. She was so broke that she could barely afford food the day before her daughter's accident. And 1 week later, she had a ton of cash. And yet through this whole charade, the lights that were supposed to go up to prevent children from being victims again never materialized. $45,000 went to the mother to use as she wanted, while the other $23,000 was embezzled by Romanoff and used for fancy vacations. That left $4,000 to put up streetlights that never actually got put up. Would you rather get scammed by a fake cancer fundraiser or one set up for a child with a fake sickness? Let us know which is worse in the comments, and thanks for watching.